Welcome to First. I'm Mark Eichman along with Shirley Min and Nichelle Polston. Delaware likes to boast of its business-friendly environment, but there's an art business that calls Delaware home, and keeping it a secret is a must.
Chris and Aaron Lee were looking for answers about what was wrong with their daughter Piper. This week on First, the genetic test that saved her life and potentially others in the future.
We also head into the past this week along the Wilmington and Western Railroad. It's our content partner feature this month. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
Delaware state leaders frequently go out of their way to talk about how business-friendly the state is. It helps attract thousands of companies to incorporate here. This week's First Look explores a new business drawing a different type of investors to Delaware, investors in valuable artwork that's now being stored in the first state. Delaware has a number of well-known art collections, perhaps most notably at the Delaware Art Museum. But there's another spot, hidden away in this Newcastle County warehouse, where valuable works are tucked away. Welcome to the Delaware Freeport, the brainchild of Fritz Dietl. He gave us a peek into the secret warehouse on the condition that we would not reveal its location.
Well, I really can't tell you very much what is here, and I will not tell you what is here. What I can tell you here, thousands of works of art are in this building.
Behind this door is a 36,000 square foot warehouse with museum quality climate control, where owners can store their art in a tax-free, customs-free location not too far from the biggest art market in the world in New York City.
Hundreds of thousands of shipments go straight from New York to freeports in Switzerland, in Luxembourg, in Singapore, and other places around the world. And for the longest time, I've said there is really no reason for it. We have Delaware.
With no sales tax and no use tax on art transferred into the state, art owners and investors can save big bucks. A buyer could save hundreds of thousands of dollars in New York sales tax by immediately shipping their art to Delaware.
There is no reason for you to pay a sales tax when you invest in the asset. And that's when you need to move it into a tax-advantaged environment. That's how you end up in Switzerland, or now, much better, much closer, in Delaware.
To protect his clients' art as well as their privacy, the warehouse has tight security.
I really can't show you much more than you've already seen because nobody is allowed into our storage rooms. I simply can't have the public go through the room. So we're bringing a crate into the room now to inspect the work. And you can see the crate come in, but then unfortunately I'll have to ask you to leave. Okay. Sorry.
The Freeport is not the only spot in Delaware that draws investors trying to avoid taxes. This office building at 1209 Orange Street in Wilmington has recently drawn international attention and some criticism. Corporations and individuals ranging from Apple and Coca-Cola to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have incorporated in Delaware, using this location to take advantage of the first state's tax laws.
The reality of the matter is we don't tax the corporate profits on subsidiaries or other entities outside of the state. So unless you're conducting business in the state of Delaware, your corporate tax is pretty limited. They'll tell you in Dover, point blank, the reason we don't have a sales tax are those many corporations.
And while art collectors don't pay the corporate fees those companies at 1209 Orange Street do, the business has been successful.
Because it already proves itself as a successful and viable business, and there was a need for this, and I'm happy that I'm filling this need.
While Fritz and his staff at the Delaware Freeport were very helpful to us while putting together this piece, they were very tight-lipped about what type of artwork they store at their warehouse and who their clients are. And in a way, it really is the Switzerland of the first state, a place where investors can place their assets, in this case high-priced art, in a location where it is protected both from harm and from taxes.
So what's the advantage of storing the art here in the first state as opposed to Switzerland in tax-free Europe?
Well, there's a couple of things. Most obviously is the distance. Delaware is much closer to New York, just a couple hours of drive versus flying to Europe. So that cuts down on costs significantly. But maybe less obvious is the stability. If you're storing art in Delaware, your investment is in a fairly stable environment. In Europe, there's more of a fear of political upheaval when it comes to taxes and other things that could change and then impact your investment in your art.
And we should mention that this segment is going to be in the latest installment of Delaware Else, the trilogy.
That's right, number 3. Our next quirky look at the first state, Delaware Else, will air on Monday night, May 16th at 9 p.m.
All right, we're looking forward to it, and we will be watching on the 16th for sure. We'll also talk a little more about the show on next week's First. Thanks so much, Mark. Now, from art treasures to miracles, many parents consider themselves lucky to live near such a world-renowned children's hospital. And now the newly expanded A.I. DuPont Children's Hospital could soon be at the forefront when it comes to genetic testing, with help from a little girl and her family. At the tender age of 3, little Piper Lee has been through more than most grown-ups. Not that you'd know it from the looks of this pint-sized cutie.
We went into her room one morning and her face was puffy.
This was 2 years ago, Dad Chris says.
Initially, we didn't think much about it. She was just about a year old, and we thought it was something like allergies or something minor. You know, kids get sick constantly.
But Chris and Mom Erin called the pediatrician, who later sent them to A.I. DuPont Children's Hospital.
She spent a lot of hours in the hospital that first day.
Which is a lot for a then 1-year-old with a twin, their 3-year-old older sister, and Mom and Dad.
They were running tests on her, and basically the end result was, we think she has a kidney problem. We don't know what it is.
Doctors pushed the Lees towards genetic testing to figure out what was wrong with Piper, and time was of the essence. Thing is, because genetic testing is pretty new, labs aren't on every corner.
Early that summer, we took some of her blood samples and we sent them to England, to Bristol, United Kingdom, to a lab there. It's one of the only labs in the world that can do these tests.
A month later, Piper was diagnosed with Denny's-Drash syndrome, a rare kidney disease that leads to kidney cancer by the age of 3 and kidney failure. A tumor could start to develop at 18 months. At the time, Piper was 16 months old.
For me, it was an answer, and it was a good thing because now we not only had a roadmap for treatment, also it told us that her disease would not attack a new kidney.
So Piper's kidneys were removed in October 2014. That December, Chris gave his daughter one of his.
As long as we can keep her in a good, healthy state, this kidney should last her a really, really long time.
I truly believe that genetic testing saved Piper's life.
And Piper is doing better than anyone imagined.
You see her running around every day, climbing on things, and probably doing more than her doctors would like her to do from that standpoint. But she's just a normal little girl, and it's awesome. It's so good to see.
But the story doesn't end there.
One of the things that always bothered us through this process was the fact that it was so difficult for us to get the genetic testing done that we had to send her blood to England.
So Chris and Erin started Piper's Kidney Beans Foundation to raise money for a new genetic testing lab right here at AI and to help offset costs because the test is expensive.
We don't feel that a family should be put into a situation where a doctor comes to them and says, well, we'd like to run this test on your daughter, but it's not going to be covered by your insurance. We're not sure how much it's going to cost, and put someone in that kind of position. We want doctors to be able to just order the test knowing it's the best thing to do for the patient and not have to think twice about it.
Erin is partnering with AI's Dr. J.J. Zaritsky, Chief of Pediatric Nephrology. Simply put, he's their kidney guy. I interviewed Dr. Zaritsky using Skype because he was out of town.
Here, patients are able to get state-of-the-art treatment in their backyard. They don't have to go to some hospital up the road or go across the country to get this testing. It's available right there. In fact, our goal is to have Nemours, AI DuPont, as the center for testing, clinical testing for nephrotic syndrome for the country.
He's creating a test that basically is going to mimic the test that Piper had done in Bristol, but then he's also adding more genes to that. So it's going to be even a broader spectrum to be able to capture all kinds of kidney disease in kids, and it's just going to be huge. So it's really exciting.
Dr. Zaritsky says late summer, early fall is when the lab should be up and running. Now, Erin Lee works for a different genetics testing lab whose CEO, she says, is offering his scientists to help AI interpret the results when its lab is set up and to help troubleshoot. Now, if you'd like to help, Piper's Kidney Beans Foundation is hosting its inaugural Benefit on Thursday night, May 12th at Harry Savoy in Wilmington. Money raised will go towards AI's new genetic testing lab and help subsidize the cost of genetic testing for families who can't afford it. Or you can donate online at piperskidneybeans.org.
Coming up on First, All Aboard, a train that takes you through time, Delaware's past as well as Delaware's present. And for our first experience, let's call it Sister Art. It's a family collaboration that is rich in family history.
It's hard to believe that one of Delaware's top tourist attractions is still moving full speed ahead after 50 years of service. The Wilmington Western Railroad is celebrating its golden year. Like any tourist attraction, it has been a big part of many family celebrations throughout the Brandywine Valley and beyond. We celebrate this occasion with our content partner, Delaware Today magazine. Hop on board this vintage tourist railroad for a trip back in time.
All aboard! The Wilmington and Western Railroad is what we call a tourist railroad, or it's commonly referred to as a heritage railroad.
Excited passengers, both young and young at heart, line up to get escorted onto the coaches. Today's trip on the diesel-powered train will take passengers through a portion of the Red Clay Valley, where they'll learn some interesting facts about the area and the train. But first, some housekeeping.
Good morning. Welcome to the Wilmington and Western Railroad. If I could have your attention for just a minute, brief safety announcement.
Passenger safety is top priority for the crew.
We do a brake test. We also do something that's called a roll-by inspection. This is where the conductor looks at the bottom of the train to make sure that everything is in perfect working condition.
Customer satisfaction is the other primary interest, and volunteers at the Wilmington Western Railroad aim to make every trip special by interacting with their passengers.
How fast would this train have run back when it was running for real?
Now, this was a spur line, so in turn, probably maybe up into maybe 15, 20 miles an hour.
The goal is to make the trip a fun learning experience.
I have a trivia question for the adults here. Who was the very first conductor on the series, Thomas the Tank Engine?
I've learned about certain parts of Delaware, the parks that are nearby, and just watching him on a train, it's been very nice.
Executive Director David Ludlow says he sees that kind of excitement all the time.
It never ceases to amaze me. Every weekend you can come and you can listen to people say, this is the first train ride, even adults. This is my first train ride.
While the diesel trains are a big hit with passengers, the granddaddy of them all, the steam locomotive, really turns heads.
This locomotive was built in 1909 by the American Locomotive Company in Schenectady, New York.
And it's pretty easy to identify the difference between the diesel and steam engine locomotive.
It's a different sound, and it's amazing. Even the adults, when they smell burning coal, they ask, I said, what's that? I said, that's coal that is burning.
Yeah, it looks like our fire's a little low, so I'll add some to it.
To commemorate the 50th year, check out the Wilmington Western Railroad website for a host of activities running until later in the fall. Operating a vintage tourist railroad can be expensive. David Ludlow, the executive director, says 60% of their funding comes from fares, and they also receive generous donations. Oh, and the first Mr. Conductor was Ringo Starr. Mark Nardone is executive editor of Delaware Today magazine. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. I think George Carlin was a conductor too.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's say the Wilmington and Western Railroad is obviously a very cool operation. Is it safe to say that the success of it is due to the volunteers?
All volunteers, from the administration on down to the mechanics and the conductors.
Okay. Now let's talk about a huge weather event back in the early 2000s. It basically wiped out the railroad. Who brought it back? What was the
As I understand it, Hurricane Henri took out 5 of the bridges, and they're just old wooden trestle bridges. And then David Ludlow, the executive director, got everybody he could in on the repair from the Department of Transportation, the federal government, to rebuild those bridges and keep the railroad going.
Probably a hard process. Yeah. Can you tell me what you pretty much love about the railroad?
I just love it. You know, I mean, I have fond memories of riding there with my parents when I was a kid. Of course, we've taken our kids there. You know, at 2 years old, my son was a train freak, so he loves that thing.
Okay, and he's still pretty much into trains?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Nikki.
Many birthday parties in northern Delaware and southeastern Pennsylvania have been celebrated on the Wilmington and Western Railroad. Thanks again, Mark Nardone, for joining us. You can go online to see the companion piece to our collaboration here by going to DelawareToday.com.
State of play time, and it's a good time to talk politics and take the temperature of Stephanie Hansen. She's a former Newcastle County Council president and now with the law firm of Young, Conaway, Stargett & Taylor. And Michael Stafford, he's also an attorney, columnist, and occasional MSNBC contributor, and so much more, Michael. Absolutely. Now that Ted Cruz has ended his campaign, it's worth looking back on the Delaware primary of a week ago and the role that state Republicans had in really driving the final nails in the coffin of Ted Cruz and making now Donald Trump the assumptive nominee. A surprise that Delaware went so hard for Donald Trump?
In the numbers that it did, yes. But overall, I mean, in a way, we were the canary in the coal mine politically. The state GOP was with O'Donnell in 2010. I mean, Trump is a bigger version of O'Donnell on a national stage. And a lot of the same dynamics are in play regarding the tone of the candidate, regarding the sorts of supporters that they're getting, regarding the lack of qualifications they have for the office they're running for. So in a way, I mean, to me, it's been deja vu. It's been 2010 all over again, except this time it's the National Party that's feeling it.
And Trump did win all three counties among Republicans, but much more of percentage of the vote in Sussex County, the two-party area.
Right, and those were the areas that went real hard for Christine O'Donnell before, and that's, I mean, I completely agree with Mike, and you know, I've said this for some time. I think that Donald Trump is to the National Republican Party what Christine O'Donnell was to the statewide Republican Party, and look what happened with that. I mean, what is the statewide Republican Party now in Delaware? Where are their high-level candidates? It really kind of decimated the field. You don't have much left. So the question's going to be, after this, after the election, where is the Republican Party nationally?
Well, and to me at least, I was surprised that that Kasich didn't do better. I thought there was still a core group of sort of moderate, you know, Castle, DuPont-style Republicans, and I thought they had bigger numbers than what we saw in the primary returns. I mean, Cruz came number 2. And between Cruz and Trump, those two sort of capture, they're extreme right-wing candidates. So yeah, very surprising the case that she didn't. There doesn't seem to be much of a legacy in terms of support within the party for the older style of Republicans that used to have success here, electoral success here.
So are we going to see more Trump, Christine O'Donnell style Republicans maybe coming to the forefront here in Delaware locally? In
Delaware, I'm not sure. I don't know how much harder right that they can go. I mean, I think there's a limit to how many elected offices there are in Sussex and southern Kent County.
Right.
And individuals like that are going to struggle to win races here, even at the local level in Newcastle County. And I don't know how much more of an effect. I mean, again, the Republican Party has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. Simpler's victory being sort of the main exception to that. How much lower can they go? I mean, how many more districts can they lose before they just cease to be? I think they've sort of hit the lower limits of where they're going to be, at least in the state House and the state Senate. So, but it's certainly going to impact any ability they have to make gains. We know who the Republican base is in Delaware now. The Republican base, they've identified themselves. They're O'Donnell supporters and they're Trump supporters. And the people of goodwill who are left in the Republican Party who don't fit those categories really ought to look in the mirror and think about where they stand.
And I guess the real problem for Republicans, with that being the main bulk of your support, you won't get many Democrats crossing over and splitting tickets in Delaware like you used to see when Mike Castle ran successfully over and over and over and over, getting a lot of Democratic votes. You won't see that in the future if that's the base.
Absolutely. It's much more polarized.
It is, and that's the quandary, isn't it? You have to, your base, these are the motivated voters, they are what you have, they're the core you have to build on. But when your base is toxic to everybody else in the electorate, you're in a dilemma. And I don't see a solution to that quandary, not in the short term anyway.
So let's make a couple of assumptions. Assuming Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee, Hillary Clinton will be the Democratic nominee, Delaware likely will support the Democrat just with the way the voter registration is. So what effect will that have with Trump versus Clinton on the down ballot races here in Delaware in November? How does that affect any of the other races?
Well, I think that Democrats are going to come out. I think that it's going to be a good voter turnout year for Democrats, and they're going to come out to vote against Trump, against that whole ideology. And I think that because they're voting anti-Trump, anti-Republican ideology, it's going to hurt Republicans down the ballot.
To the extent that there were any opportunity for pickups and swing districts in the state house or the state senate, I think those opportunities are out the window now, given who's going to be at the top of the ballot. Again, it's 2010 all over again, where Christine's presence really, she drew out Democratic voters, she put Chris Coons in the Senate, and she hurt everybody down ballot.
And that's the same thing nationally. I mean, the question here is, Hillary is likely going to be the next president, but will this also cause the House and the Senate now to switch back to become more Democratic, just like it did in Delaware? I really think that we're watching a larger version of what just happened here.
Let's talk about the Democrats a little bit nationally, too. Bernie Sanders did fairly well here in Delaware among Delaware Democrats. Didn't get to the level of beating Hillary, but got fairly close for where he's been. Had a good night in Indiana.
He sure did.
What does that say about his campaign and sort of pulling the Democratic Party a little bit more to the left?
To me, it says that the Hillary Clinton campaign is a car leaking oil with its muffler dragging and throwing sparks down the road. I mean, this is a wreck. Maybe not as much of a wreck as the comparison as the Trump campaign, but wow, this is a really weak candidate who cannot seal the deal in a race that, by all rights, by any metric, should be hers. I wouldn't count Sanders out yet. I know it's a long run, but I think there's still a chance. She's historically weak. She's vulnerable. I think he senses that.
Is she vulnerable? Quite a grim assessment there of the Clinton campaign. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't think so. I think she still pulls it out, and I think she pulls it out fairly easily. But it is a surprise how well he's doing. But maybe it's just that, they're not as far apart as Trump and Cruz were. Maybe that's what we're really seeing.
November will be here before you know it. Plenty of time to talk before then, and we'll have you back. Stephanie Hansen, Michael Stafford, thanks for being here. Check out the full state of play online at newsworks.org/Delaware.
Love to convince you to watch First online, partly because we know you can watch the show when you want, and partly because it's just a good idea. Go to WHYY.org/first. Past shows, going back several years, are there as well.
From their roots in Ireland to their family's metal business, sisters Jane and Nancy Kavanaugh have used their family history to influence their art. The sisters have a new joint exhibit exploring their industrial side. First Experience stopped by this week for a look.
We've both been working individually as artists for a long, long time. We started thinking about metal and things that people work with to create with their own hands. We are a family of metal workers. Joseph Kavanaugh Company, this is his 150th year in business. It is currently run by my youngest sister Ann Kavanaugh and my youngest brother Joe Kavanaugh. And they're my brother and sister too. She's just more possessive of them.
Because they like me better.
That's true. We photographed a machine shop
up at Hagley Museum, and then we stumbled into the tool shop. That's where they made all their tools from years ago. We had recognized from the shop that
our father had and his little girls, just be mesmerized by these big machines and these big pieces of metal. We carry that with us, even though we have not worked in the shop. Nancy with her industrial slant, and I with working with the clay, I was really interested in replicating some of this rolling and bending. That's when I started firing in my kettle kiln outside, so they look like they're old metal.
I'm looking for something that may have outlived its usefulness, but still has a story to it. There's a reverence for what a human being can make with his own hands. It's pretty fascinating.
The first show that we did, I said to Nancy, let's do an Ireland show. We had spent time there together.
My mother's family is still there, so we have a very deep connection with our cousin in Kilkenny. One of the things that I love about Ireland is it's all about the conversation, the chat. Our pieces are in a conversation with each other.
Yes.
And that's all part of being Irish, is just finding somebody that will
listen.
Well, that will listen. That's what we want to do in the show, to make a statement about creativity. People come in and see a piece and it jogs something in their mind. They're able to talk about their own lives.
Yes.
They found something here and it reminds them of a time in their lives.
I would like to see them smile. I would like to see them form any kind of connection that they can. I've had people pick up a piece and say, oh, this reminds me of when, and that's all I need.
We just can't help ourselves.
We can't. You do it. You grab your camera or sit with your images, and I just go out to my studio and just pick this up, we'll do this today. Okay, I got this thing going over here, and I see it as a never-ending journey that we're on, and it's
well, I don't know about
fun.
Never-ending.
I'm going for never-ending. I'm going for never-ending.
Possibly for hopefully
so take
for
care
a while.
of yourself. Eat your vegetables.
It's just a wonderful way to interact with life, just being alive.
You can find both Jane and Nancy at the opening reception for their show on May 6th and 7th. The show will continue through September. You can visit janekav.com for more information.
As we tease at the top of the broadcast, we are getting ready for Delaware Else. Next week on First, we'll have another segment for you as we get ready for the May 16th premiere.
And that is First for this week. We thank you for watching. A couple of notes before we go. If you missed our conversation on the situation surrounding Amy Joyner Francis, please check it out at WHYY.org/first. Meanwhile, we'll be back with more First next Friday. For Nichelle Polston and Shirley Min, I'm Mark Eichman. Have a great week.